Hello, this is tutorial video number 2, and where we're going to be looking at GarageBand, how to start a session, how to set up a session, and how to export files. So to begin, we need to open GarageBand, which could actually be on this dock bar if we want it to be. The way we add that again is we click Launchpad, we drag GarageBand into the dock, then press escape to exit this view. Now we can just click GarageBand if we want to open it. We can also press Command Space. GarageBand is already typed in, but I could type it in and press Enter and open it that way. Or you could again go to the Finder or the Launchpad. Computers are pretty interesting things, especially Macs. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, so to speak. So we'll just press Enter from this GarageBand here. Because it was selected. If you press enter, it just opens it up. Now this has opened up a session we had from last night. So we're going to shut that, or actually we're just going to click new. That'll automatically shut it. We can create a new project. Now to create a new project, you can double click here to create an empty project. You can open a recent project here, or you can use a template, which essentially are a sequence of like tracks that are already laid out with particular effects, maybe some loops in them. So you can sort of use a template if you just want to have an investigation of how like different sessions can be set up, or if you want to use that session to like start an idea off with. But essentially what I'm going to teach you today, you can make your own templates because making the track is just sort of learning a couple things and then just replicating those processes over and over again in order to like create something from, I guess, just different elements that was in the program. So we'll go back to new project, click create new project. Now we can choose to create software instruments, or we can choose to use audio tracks. So an audio track would be if you use the microphone on your computer, or if you used your audio interface, anything that was plugged into your audio interface would be an audio track. Anything that comes from the computer, like using computer sample packs or VSTs, virtual like instruments, then that would be a software instrument. So usually a track's a combination of software and audio tracks. The drummer track adds like an automatic looped drummer. Which you're a drummer, I don't think you really need like a loop drum to play with, unless you wanted something to play along with. You could also use it like kind of like a metronome. So we're just going to click create new software instrument. So that defaults as classic electrical piano. And you might see here on the left, you can actually just choose from all these instruments, which then if you just like click an instrument, so we'll look at orchestra, we'll go strings, string ensemble. If you double click, it changes that to string ensemble. So if you wanted to say have one or two software instruments, you might want strings, maybe you want a bass, and maybe you want a drum sound or another keyboard or a cello. What you can do is you can go up here and create a new track and double click again, comes up as default electrical piano. We might say click bass, so with fingerstyle bass. Now what you can do, rather than create track again, if it's a software instrument, you want to replicate that software instrument, you can press Command D and it just duplicates that track. Now you can then change it to whatever you want. It just sort of saves time. I mean, from my perspective, like I've been doing a lot of this stuff for work. So it's kind of like learning like where you can save time in the process. So you're not sort of like getting stuck and bogged down with like learning all these things in the program. You just kind of know like the quickest way to do what you want to do. So you can just sort of like get your creative ideas out there. So we'll click this drum machine, I think. Dub smash. So you might also notice here as well, like the instruments that are grayed out, they're instruments that come with Logic Pro. So if you downloaded like a trial Logic Pro or bought Logic Pro, it comes with all these instruments as like default. So we've got our free software tracks now. We might just want to create a few audio tracks. So I'm going to create new track. I'll click audio. You might see here it comes as input 1. The reason it only comes with one input is because my audio interface is not actually turned on at the moment, because I need the audio in order to like record this Zoom call. I need it from the computer, not my audio interface. So if I use audio input here, it'll actually just record my voice through the same microphone that it's recording this Zoom call from. If I had my audio interface plugged in, I've got 8 inputs. I would then be able to choose from these 8 inputs, and I could just select which input I wanted for each track. So we'll just click create audio track input 1. There's no other choice. On your audio interface as well, at the moment you've only got one input, so it'll probably still come up as input 1. If you get it audio interface with more than one input, you'll have more options to choose from. So we'll create that, and now I'm getting a feedback loop because that's live. Turn that volume down, and I might create another track just from pressing Command D, like a second audio track. So those are labeled by the name of the instrument. I'm going to call this one voice, and maybe I'll call this one I don't know, what are we going to call it? Congas or percussion. So in order to change the name of the track, you select the track with your mouse and you double click on the text here, and then it highlights it as blue, and then you can just type in whatever you want. So now we've got we've got these tracks here, so free software tracks and 2 audio tracks. Now the next thing to do is just sort of set up our program a little bit better, just so it's a bit easier to see what's going on. So we're going to go here to track. We're going to click show configure track header, and we're going to click record enable. Now what that has done now, it's brought up this little red box, which will arm each track. So you see when I click both of them, you can see my voice moving in the green bar there. It's only allowing me to select one at a time because it's the same input doubled up. If this was input 1 and this was input 2, I could actually have them both recording at the same time. But in this case, we've only got one input. So another input is really, sometimes they call inputs channels. It's really stereo audio, like audio that you listen to on your computer as a stereo headphones, or even your TV or your phone. That's basically got 2 channels of audio. Or another way to look at it, it's got 2 inputs. So the audio signal from your television or your computer or your phone, it's sending out 2 channels of audio, which then go to your left and right headphones or your left and right speakers. So now we can also record enable the software instrument. So I've got my little Echo Mini, just like you, that's plugged in at the moment. So if I wanted to, I could record me playing strings in addition to me talking at the same time. Now, if I wanted to record that as a live take right now, because both tracks are armed, we basically just click the record button here and we're sort of ready to go. Now, it actually started recording with a count in. You can see that it's recording my wave, like my voice as I'm talking here. The metronome's on. You can flick the metronome off here, and that one there flicks off the count in. If I want to stop recording, I can click the stop button up here, or I can just press space. So we've got some voice audio here. Now, let's record some strings. Righto. It's actually recording over my voice audio as well because the track was still armed, but that doesn't really matter. press space. Now you see that there's 2 tracks here. We've got a software instrument called string ensemble. That's got this information here in green. And then we've got this voice track here, which has got this information here in blue. And then you might see at the bottom here, we've got these controls, EQ. You've got your track controls here, or you can flick to master, which gives you the master effects for the whole session. Now, just to make that a bit clearer, we're going to go up here to track. We're going to click show master track. Now the master track is its own independent track. The advantage of that is we can go up here. Where is it? We've got the button I showed you last night. Show automation. So the beauty of that is we can now basically have the automation for all the different tracks that we've got here. And automation is basically another way of saying like, it's sort of like a way to sort of say that like over this period of time, we can automate or adjust these like variables. So this is like, for example, here, this is the audio for voice. The volume's turned down here at minus 95 decibels. If you bring it back up to 0 decibels, which is actually what we want our audio to sit on. We never want to go above 0 on this particular audio adjustment. That will distort your audio. It's not necessarily what you want. To make stuff loud, the best practice is not to actually go above 0. It's kind of like when I started recording audio, I used to just like turn everything up. Like, yeah, I want it loud, but it actually just distorts the audio. And the loudness actually comes in like mastering and mixing the track or the material after you've sort of like put it all in there. So at this point, when we're making a track, you'd leave all these on 0. And then when we want to boost the audio, we do it on the master track, and then we do it in the effects within each track, rather than doing it from the volume. You use things like compressors and limiters and EQ, delay and reverb, and yeah, different effects. So let's have a look what we got here. So at the moment, turn this off. We've got this horrible string pattern that I've made here, and we've got some audio. So we've got the beginning of a bit of a track here, I guess. So we'll just set up a few more track things here. So click show tempo track. That is your BPM for your track. So at the moment, it's default set at 120. Every digital audio workstation, which is what this is, basically defaults every track to 120. So if you want to play to a metronome, sort of do things that might have different tempos, you'll want to adjust this track here. So you can basically just drag the whole line up and down. And you can see the numbers there are changing, you know, down, down, down. We might just want to set it like, say, like 100. So if we want to use the metronome, it's now playing at 100. When you change the tempo, it'll actually also automatically change the tempo of every software instrument. So the strings now will play at 100 beats per minute as opposed to 120. So you kind of want to set your tempo, I guess, at the start of your session, based on like what your song idea is. Unless you kind of like make a track and like, no, I just want the whole thing to slow tempo, then you could just like sort of adjust it here. You can also click the line, and that can like create key points. So you could, for example, have 98 BPM here, and then right up here, you're going to like bring it up to 107 or something like that. But with anything in regards to tempo, essentially, like if you just randomly or like erratically adjust the tempo, it might do something that's, I guess, like quite unmusical based on like how you play to that tempo or how you arrange the tempo. But regardless of that, it's a really interesting thing that you can adjust. And it kind of, especially when you're making stuff on computers, you can sort of bring this sort of flexible tempo in, or sort of slight tempo adjustments which can give like instruments a more natural feel. And this is also too the same reason why we want to automate our volume. So when as you know, when you play drums live or any instrument, the volume of the instrument is basically based off like how hard you play the instrument and how it's recorded. So with software instruments, a lot of the time, the strings or the bass or the drum, that is at maximum velocity. They're at maximum amplitude. So they've got like the most attack that they can have, and they're at full volume. But as you know, like when you play an instrument, like really good musicians adjust their volume all the time. So you might not actually want your instrument to have like one set static volume. You might want to adjust it. So for example, this line here, we could bring a fade in. The type of fade, like that'd be a slower fade over the whole track, or you might have an abrupt fade. You can also, I believe, maybe not in this program, you can just keep adding dots, which then can like change the shape of that volume. You might have like a little sort of like rise in volume, like a peak, which will then like sort of like increase the excitement in that little part. So in a lot of like film scoring, when you're like watching a movie, all of a sudden it gets louder, or like a lot of like brick walled like 90s grunge music, like it gets louder in the guitar solos and stuff. And all they're really doing there is like just bringing the amplitude up or bringing the volume up. So with this automation, you can actually also use it for panning. So you've got like sort of like left and right. See, it adjusts that knob when you touch it. You've also got EQ, so you can select any one of these like small factors, which is probably a bit harder for this particular automation thing, but you can adjust it. You can change the amount of reverb, echo, etc. These effects are also available in the effects route for each track. So you might see here that you've got like the master echo switched on. You can go into the setting here and change the type of notes. What else we can do? We can change the sensitivity of your keyboard, which is like your Akai Mini. You can change the attack, the release, and then you've got this overall EQ here. So if you listen to the string, oh, oops, I've pressed the wrong button. Go back here. No, I've, all right, bring that back, show smart controls. And then we go back to where we were. Sometimes with computers, it's really easy because all these programs have shortcuts. It's sometimes like you'll just knock a key and it's like the thing disappeared. That's why these menus are really good to get familiar with. Usually view and window will bring back anything that's gone missing. So your editor here, that's your MIDI editor and your note editor. So if we click hide editor, it disappears. If we click show smart controls, it appears, and then we can flick it back to EQ. So really, if you sort of get familiar with this view, window, probably not as important. If you don't have an Akai Mini keyboard plugged in, if you just have your laptop, you could click show keyboard, which would actually show a little mini keyboard, which you can actually play with your mouse. I think you can actually play it with your computer keyboard too. Or you can actually show musical typing. That's the same thing. And then you can drag the scale up and down. So pretty much every computer, every Mac program will have this feature of musical typing and musical keyboard, regardless of what audio program you use. Also too, when I can't find a thing, I go to help and I'm like, oh, where's smart tools? I can't find it in the menu. You start typing smart tools, smart controls, and then it comes up. Oh, there's smart controls. Oh, tell me about smart controls. And you might click on smart controls overview, and then it tells you all about what smart controls is. So you can sort of read all about it, learn about all the features in the program. And these links here as well will take you to additional sort of things you can do, like adding and editing effects plugins, using the arpeggiator, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty much all the information is here. It's just learning, I guess, how to find it. So you might want to learn about MIDI. Again, MIDI will come up. in the control there, or it might be about inputs. No, nothing for inputs. Let's try outputs. Glossary. Okay, this goes over simple terms. We might want preferences. Okay, preferences. So you want to find GarageBand preferences, you go over here. So we've got our track here. We can arm it. I accidentally turned off the automation because the shortcut for it's A. So you can also turn it on and off by pressing A, which is pretty cool. So let's just record something here. I'm literally just banging keys and it sounds like a small child is playing that has no idea how to like arrange music whatsoever. All right. So, and it's kind of really annoying. And I'll probably delete this later because it's like, I guess it's like very offensive to music in general. Anyway, so for example, we've finished our session. We're like, we've got these 3 tracks. We want to delete this track. We don't need this one. I'm just actually clicking delete on delete on the input. We've got these tracks here. You can also adjust the panning for the whole track here. But again, if you want a more intricate panning, for example, you'd use this automation feature, which then if you adjust the panning over time, then you'll see this knob changes. It does the same thing with volume. So it's essentially like a computer. Automation means like it's automating the process so you don't have to do it like in real time. So you're basically training the computer to adjust the volume and panning or whatever effect you want to sort of play with. So like over the next few weeks, we can have a look at these different effects and different ways that you can use them, I guess, to make like things more musical. So we've got our tracks here. What else can I show you? So with this MIDI editor, so what MIDI actually is, it's basically just like a series of like computer code. And it basically like the information, like sample packs are just like a series of sounds. And when you hit the keyboard button, it basically just sends information to the computer. It basically tells it to turn the note on or off. And then it will link to the samples of the audio on your computer. And then it'll play the audio in real time, which is a pretty amazing thing. So your drum kit can actually record in MIDI information. So this is what MIDI is. It's essentially just a little line and it's got a location and a pitch. So it's position 1, 2, 1, 1. That's your position in the timeline. And you can move these notes up and down the scale. So you've got like, you know, your high octaves and your low octaves down here. But you're limited to the range of the instrument. So some instruments will only be within a certain octave. You can adjust the length of the note here or bring it right out. You can also right click. You can click copy. You can click paste, which copy and paste is also Command C is copy and Command V is paste. So if I move my cursor around here and Command V, it'll paste that note where I've told it to go. You can also change the value of the note here. And you can also change the velocity of the note. The velocity is sort of like the attack. So it's like sort of maximum velocity will be like maximum volume or maximum attack on each note. Sort of like when you're hitting a piano, you can like hit every note really loud, or you can sort of like be less loud in every note. So if you lower the velocity, you'll lower the harshness of how the note is struck in MIDI. Because MIDI essentially is just note on, note off. Within that, you've only got like really volume and velocity, 2 variables. So that's why things like automation and effects are really good things in order to manipulate your like pre-recorded sample instrument into something that's like more unique, more musical, and I guess like more your own material. So you're really like adjusting this sound to get it to sound how you want it to sound, rather than it to just sound like it came in the computer pack that the other sort of like 10 million people got. So another interesting thing as well. So was, I guess, within the MIDI thing. So you might notice too, E is editor, A is automation. So it saves a lot of like going to a lot of menus once you sort of work these little shortcuts out. So you can actually just Google GarageBand shortcuts. And I think there's like 86 shortcuts that come up. I should basically just tell you the different key combinations to get that functionality. So if you want to delete a note, you can just select it and press delete. Undo, Command Z. Right click, you can delete it or paste it and do all these other things. If you want to loop that, you select the file and press L, and then that will loop that for the duration of the timeline. If you don't want it to loop, select the file again, press L. If you want to edit the performance, you can do this thing called split. So we might just say I want to split this note here. It's really good to like zoom right in. And you want to check up here as well. You've got beats and project, beats and time, beats and time. So all that really does is that affects the adjustment of your timeline and how the computer interprets time. So for our purpose, we'll just leave it on beats and project. But in a lot of other programs as well, like when I'm editing film, I bring it down to samples because it's going off to like all the frames and samples of the like audio, the vision that I'm cutting to. I need it to be like particular to a frame. But usually with music programs, you might like use, you go off like beats because you're like going off like the metronome, like that you recorded to a beat. And then like when you're going through to a metronome, you can actually just see like, okay, there's one bar, right? Like going by beats, there's bar 2. So all this stuff here is just a subdivision of that bar. So once you sort of understand that, you can sort of understand your like beat placement, and you can understand how to edit the audio. It's just like working out like your beats and making sure that you've got it selected to like beats in time or beats in project or even beats. But you see too, that changes the dial. So I leave it on beats and project just because I can see like the time signature. You can change the tempo manually. Okay, multiple tempo events detected. That's because I have adjusted this tempo here. So we bring this down again. It's gonna work. Come on. All right. Go back here. Hide tempo track. Show tempo track. There we go. So if I select that, I select maybe control. Oh, no, we don't do that. We'll make that smaller. Control A selects everything. But you just want to delete this automation. Select over it, press delete. Now it's just 98. Now if I change this here, it won't say multiple tempo events detected. It's just basically saying that you can't override the master tempo because you've already got tempos here. So yeah, easy fix. We're going back to editing. So we've got that sort of sorted out. Now we might want to like cut this here. So we'll zoom in again. I just want this sequence here. So I select the file that I want to splice, and I can go up here to edit, split regions at playhead, or I can use this shortcut, which is Command T. And you might also see below that, edit, join regions. If you select 2 regions by pressing that and clicking Shift, holding it down, clicking that, let go, press Command J, and it joins them back together again. So it's just like little things you can do to edit, because sometimes you'll make an edit you didn't mean to make, and you might just want to join it back together. So we're just going to select this, make sure zoomed in to make sure we've got the start of the note. Select Command T. I'm going to delete that. I decided I don't want it anymore. I'm going to delete that. I don't want it anymore. I'm going to actually, I want to keep that. Command Z, undo. I'm going to press Command D, duplicate the track. If I select that here, I can actually hold down the Alt button, which is left of the command. Now, all these buttons, Space, Command, Alt, they're actually the closest buttons to your hands, and they're right at the front of the keyboard. So we select Alt. I'm holding it down still. I hold down the left mouse button, or if you don't have a mouse, to do these double clicks and mouse button holds, you use 2 fingers on the cursor pad, and you click that way, and it actually brings up the right mouse click function. It's a bit tricky to sort of show over Zoom, but I can show at some point if you can't sort of get it worked out. So we're going to hold down Alt, drag that down, and then we can basically just duplicate that track. And you can just keep holding Alt down, and you basically just keep dragging, or you can actually press Control C, put the mouse cursor at the front, press Control V, and just keep pressing Control V. And that way, or if you made a mistake, press Control Z. So there's a few shortcuts you can use to edit audio and sound. And the same thing, you can do the same thing with audio. You can sort of edit the bits of audio here. And I think that's probably enough for one lesson. Next one, I'll sort of show you some different sort of aspects of like how to do EQ, because it's actually like a really important thing. And it's also like a really, I mean, it's a sort of easy sort of thing you can start playing around with. It's kind of like when Dean showed me how to use EQ, I found it really interesting because it's like such a subtle little thing, but it makes such a big difference. So we've finished our session for the day. A big mistake we've made that you might notice here is we actually haven't saved the track. So if you've done all this work and then something happened and your computer crashed, or you accidentally lost the work, you'd probably be quite upset. So you can just click Save As, because I want to give it a new name. I want to save it on the desktop. I'm going to make a new folder, call it, I'll just call it New Tracks. But I might give it a bit of a more meaningful name that I understand. Sort of a month down the track, I'm like, what was that thing? Okay, so maybe it's tutorial example for Kai. So when you label tracks, it needs to have a meaning. You might date it. So I might say it's on the 2nd of September, 02, 09, 21, just to give myself like a frame of reference. So we've got like a folder, and we got example 1, and we click Save. So now we've got our folder, we've got the track saved. You want to export the track. So another thing as well I forgot to mention, if you drag this at the top, this yellow part, you can actually adjust what you want to loop. So you can actually loop a small part of audio by using this yellow feature here. It'll just keep going back around. If you then extend it out, you can loop that much. But if you want to only export part of your track, then whatever you've got selected, that's all it exports. So I want to export all the track. So I select this part of it. Now, if I didn't export all of that, it would actually export all this silence at the end of the track here, which we don't really want that. So we're just going to shape it to this point here. And the only reason why it's so long is we pressed that loop button before. So we're going to go share. You can actually do these other things here, SoundCloud, media browser, music, but it's actually better to just export song to disk. So it'll say defaults go to that new folder we made. It's already got the name of the track here. Notice it's already dated it and put a time on it, which is pretty cool. So we've got these different file types here. If it's just audio that I'm working on, I usually use WAV. If I'm bouncing out an example to show someone, I'll use MP3. And I don't really use these 2 types that often. AAC is just like sort of a different type of like kind of like MP3, I believe. And that's a sort of different type of WAV. But I just use WAV and MP3s because they're the 2 most well-known types of audio. So we'll click export. That's now exported the entire track. Sometimes just to make sure I'll select everything before I export, just to sort of like remind myself, like this is what I'm exporting. If we only want to export string ensemble, you'd click solo here. See how it's made everything else gray? That means the audio is turned off. So we click solo. And then we drag this cursor in. We might want to keep it the same length. Usually we just only export it as long as the audio. Now, if I click share, export song to disk, I rename it, maybe add a bit at the end, strings, or maybe I'll just take out the time. You know, we know that there's only one example in that folder. Wave, yes. So before we had 24-bit, so we want to keep exporting it 24-bit. Notice the option's slightly different because like it's like one, well, it just looks different because it's only one track. So now we click export. Now if we minimize the thing, and where is it? We've got the folder here. Open the folder. It's got the session was saved, and it's got the two examples. It's got the example of the entire track, and it's also got the example of just the strings. And yeah, that's sort of like the basic, I guess, overview of GarageBand. I would urge you to familiarize yourself with these menus here. If you have any trouble with anything not working, it's usually in preferences, you've got to change it. So just to go over it again, these are our options for audio inputs and outputs. Now, this was very similar to this menu we found in system preferences, which I mentioned in the first tutorial. So you see they both say output and input, and they've both got the same list of devices. So because my audio interface is turned off, I've got external headphones selected, and I've got MacBook Pro microphone. If my audio interface was turned on, I could select from here audio box, and my output device would also be audio box. You can actually also change the volume and tone of the metronome. You can change like how your loops, because you got a loop library there that you can also access. That's sort of like information for your track names. You can chuck that in if you want. That just sort of goes over like how it records audio. This bit here goes over how like performances are like recorded for instrument software tracks. So merge means it's like, it's going to like combine things. Replace, we don't want that because it'll just replace the old track when you go to record on the same track. You've also got, you can open things from here. You can add a movie. So you can click open movie. There's a movie here somewhere. We'll go into media, movies, just pick any old thing. There's like a feature length film. You open a movie, extracts the audio, and it then like just like loads the audio, the movie file into the browser. And you can use like any video file really. It then brings up this video file that will play in the background of your timeline. And you've got the audio here that you can mute. That's mute or, you know, solo, which is pretty cool. So you can actually, yeah, a lot of time, like I'm actually steal little bits of audio from things. Or if I'm like doing stuff for film, you could actually like do a soundtrack for a film just using GarageBand, because you can layer all your sound up under here with the tracks. If you want to get rid of this, just exit it. If you want to bring it back, you double click there. If you want to get rid of your movie, I believe, how do you do it in this one? I think you might just click movie, file, movie, remove movie. But it leaves the audio there that you might notice. You can delete that if you didn't want it as well. These other edit buttons are the same menus that'll come up if you right click on things. Sometimes it's easier just to find it in the menu. Track, I think we went through most of these things. We don't need the transportation track. You can click show arrangement track. We don't need the arrangement track. So we won't go into that. That determines the count in for your metronome, 1 or 2 bars. You can create a volume fade out on your main track. That's just the automatic fade out for your end of your song, but you don't need to do that because you can actually key it in manually yourself. Show media browser. That just shows different audio that you can then use to drag in. So if you've got a bunch of audio on your computer, like for example, I've got those sound effects libraries. I could actually just go to where my sound effects libraries are located, and I could like bring them in to GarageBand. It looks like this is sort of set up that's only getting stuff out of iTunes, Logic, and GarageBand. So I might have to put the audio in the GarageBand folder. Same thing, you can drag in movies from this media browser. And I went through these things before. Minimize, zoom, that's the same. Minimize, zoom you've got over here. That's actually another shortcut for your smart tools. This is a shortcut for your edit, which again, smart controls is here. You also press B. And you've got like your edit, which was E. And then your help. So I think that's probably, that's probably like an overview of like the main features. That one is a tuner. So if you've got your guitar or bass plugged in, you can actually use the tuner on the program to tune your instrument. And these ones, notepad, you can make notes. Hello, okay. That's little samples of like your loop library. Yeah, and then back to the media browser. So there's like multiple buttons and multiple menu items and multiple right clicks that all can bring you to the same place. It's just basically like working out what tools and methods work the best for you. Anyway, I'm gonna go sit down for a while before I get onto my next project. And any questions, send me a message or shoot me an email. Talk to you soon, mate. See ya, bye.